Well, welcome to the Crafting Character podcast. Steve Carter here, and in association with my good friends at Preaching Today and Food for the Hungry, I bring you a podcast that hopefully helps you get better at the craft of preaching and teaching and communicating God's word while always hoping and really ensuring that our character leads the way. Well, today I'm excited to have my friend Luke Norsworthy back on the Crafting Character podcast, but he's a pastor in Austin, Westover Hills Church of Christ. I've had the privilege to preach there. It's an amazing, amazing community in a college town. It is just incredible people. And he's also an incredible podcast host. I want to say he's had over 600 or 700 guests. I'll have to ask him. But also he's an incredible author, and he is releasing a brand new book. It's entitled How to Love the Life You Already Have. And I read it. It pastored me in some moments. It pestered me in a few others. It reminded me of the life I have and the life that has actually been entrusted to me and the life that really is possible. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about his character, his community that he has around him. And then he and I have actually shared a connection over grief and the loss of one of our parents. And so I'm excited to welcome my friend Luke on to the Crafting Character podcast. I'm glad you're here, man.
Bro, I'm so honored to be with you. A pastor who pesters. I feel like that should be my new calling card.
So one of my favorite quotes is from a Lithuanian rabbi who, Dr. Gary Burge, was mentor, just the New Testament theologian at Wheaton, now at Calvin. But he told me this quote. He said that this Lithuanian rabbi said, "To be somebody's rabbi, the people must let you shock them, surprise them, and put them back together." And I think you do that. I think you do that well. Like, I think you press, you push, you pull, you pastor. And honestly, I think you did this in this book. And what I really found myself thinking about in reading your book was I was with another mentor just recently, and he was describing like one of his biggest concerns facing the church today is the lack of numbers of people who are going to Bible college to be pastors or who are going to seminary to be pastors. Yep. And it was just like hanging over my head because I kept thinking, why is that? And then I thought of your book, and it made me wonder, is it because the example that these young people are seeing are a bunch of pastors who don't actually love their life? Because when I came up, the pastors that had the most impact on me, they loved what they had a burden, a calling. You wanted to, it was contagious. And so I'm curious, just from the start, how do you interact with that?
Okay. First of all, in honor of Steve, you being from Chicagoland, Steve of Chicagoland, I believe is your moniker. And my name is Luke Austin Norsworthy because I am of Austin. I'm going to take a page out of the most mercurial and enigmatic, but gifted and talented artist from your city of Chicago in Kanye West. And you're going to be Taylor Swift to my Kanye West right now. And I'm going to let you get to this question in a second, but I first have to say, Grieve, Breathe, Receive is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I finished it just the other day. I literally cried on an airplane. Thanks a lot, Steve. I look like an idiot. I literally am like holding up my shirt over my eye because I don't want the people next to me see me. It was absolutely beautiful. And so if your listeners are thinking, what book should I buy? If they don't get your book, do not buy my book. Buy Steve's book before you buy anything else. It is absolutely beautiful, and I'm so proud of you for writing it. Now, what was your question again?
You lost me at Kanye West. So
I'm Kanye to your Taylor.
thank you for the kind words.
It's absolutely beautiful.
But
okay, your question. Okay.
My question. Yeah, give it to me.
I think it would be very difficult for a young person to look up and go, that person's miserable. They're not happy. They're beaten down. They're burdened. That's what I want to do for a living. I think the assessment of the diminishing number of people who are going into ministry is very consistent with what I experience in my tradition in the Churches of Christ, my alma mater, Abilene Christian University. I keep hearing how it's almost impossible to find a preaching major. When I was there was a solid group of us, and then that number continues to get smaller and smaller. I think I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking this through, but it makes a whole lot of sense to me that why would a young person go into a profession if the examples they see are miserable? And for me, there are people that I looked up to when I was going into preaching, a guy named Rick Atchley, who you've gotten to know, who's a fan of yours. Mike Cope. Even when I was young, the first real pastor who was close to my age was Matt Chandler. And he was 5 or 6 years older than me in the same town. He was just getting to start preaching. And I saw these people and I was like, wow, I do want to be like them. They seem to really have found this calling that they've tapped into, and they have put the effort, they've fought for the calling they have. And I want to be a part of whatever they're doing. And so, yeah, I think you're right. That's definitely contagious.
Well, talk about that, because you obviously write this book, and I'm always fascinated with the kind of Genesis story, the origin story. Why this book? Why at this time?
Well, because I'm really bad at it. Because I didn't read your book yet. And you have this thing early on in your book where you say 38 to 43 are some of the 5 most difficult years, or they might just be the 5 most difficult years of many men's life. I wrote this book. I'm about to turn 43. I started writing this book about 5 years ago because I had so much to be grateful for, and I continue to have so much to be grateful for. I have a wife of 20 years. I have 3 wonderful children who, by the grace of God, are healthy and happy. And I have family, I have friends, I have this abundance of things that matter. And yet I have this innate ache that says, no, if things are better, if you had what you wanted, if you achieved and acquired and possessed all these other things, then you would finally have peace. And so I wrote the book because I had to figure this out for myself. There's a quote by Joan Chittister. It's my favorite quote ever. "In this moment is the essence of everything glorious I've been given in life, and it's enough." And the reason that quote has pestered me is because that's a vision for where I wanted to be, and I wasn't there. And so I just had to be open to what the Spirit was doing within me, and hopefully in turn express that as a gift to others. But first and foremost, it was because I had every reason to love the life that I had, but I just didn't have it. I wasn't there. I wasn't the person who could do that yet.
Isn't it fascinating that word enough? I often have to ask myself, how much is enough? How much money is enough? How much speaking opportunities is enough? How much is enough? And that quote is so powerful. But I also think in the church, where we want to see people come to faith, we want to see, to have this secret of contentment, and yet want to risk and reach and evangelize and see people experience the good. It almost sometimes feels like you have this internal push to, it's never enough. Yeah. It's never enough. Gotta keep building. Gotta get more. And yet, the deeper you go with the vision of Jesus, it's learning to actually love the life you already have. And I think as you started to process through this, you started to make a list of some kind of key and core demands. Talk about how that, because I thought the word demand was really, really fascinating. Talk about that.
Well, it really started because the book was an attempt to learn how to be present, to be fully open to what's right in front of me, to be like Moses and take my metaphorical sandals off because the ground I'm standing on is holy. And I realized that I approached this idea of being present as a singular effort in this present second to really be present. And I came to the conclusion for me that being present isn't a momentary decision, but it is the culmination of many decisions you made all up until then. And so it's, for some of us, you can just get up out of bed and say, hey, I'm going to run a marathon today. But most of us only can do that after months and maybe years of training. And I realized, I think for many of us, being present is the accumulation of months of decisions, if not years of decisions, to become a certain kind of person who can be content where they are. And so I realized that there's a demand that you have to figure out what's at the core. Is it mercy or is it grace? Is it love? Is it striving? Which one is it? Like you have to figure out, that's one of the first core demands. And then I realized that you don't experience love on your own. So there's a demand for connection. And then one of the most important questions we all have to figure out is, how do I learn how to deal with the demands that the disappointments of life put in front of us, right? And so I started to just build this list of things like, I know life demands for you to make peace with this part of the existence that we all have.
Yeah, the subtitle is so beautiful. A guide to become the person life is demanding of you. And I like, and then the way that I was like, oh, that's so fascinating because life does have these demands. But then the way that you started to unpack that, the disappointment demand, the demand for connection. I love the play and the intentionality with that. Talk about the disappointment demand. And because I think again, I love how you started with the core and having to really decide like, okay, what's my motivation? What's driving me? But I thought it was like the next section was, oh, you can have that. And yeah, the wilderness and the wild and the desert and the difficult and the struggle, it's going to show up. So how do you become present to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is part of your book too, is obviously, I would say a centerpiece of your book as I experienced it was you dealing with disappointments. Like life should have gone a certain way for you. It didn't. And many of the disappointments that you had to carry, from my perspective, were disappointments that were just like bequeathed onto you. Like they weren't your decisions that led to these disappointments. They were just disappointments because of the environment, the system that you were in. I think many people can relate to that. But for years, like there's always the question of like, does adversity cause character or does character, emerge out of it? Like that's a great question. But I think the real question we'll have to figure out is, when life gives you a disappointment, what are you going to do? Because it's going to happen to every one of us. And there's no real opportunity we have to like bypass that because you can't stay the same. Part of grief is that there is this birthing process that's going on inside of you, and that the person that you need to become to carry the weight of that disappointment isn't you right now. But on the other side of grief, there is a version of you that's being born that has the strength to carry that. And there's a lot of disappointments I've experienced that in the moment, like I couldn't deal with it. My first job out of school, I was 26 when I got the news that the church that had hired me within maybe like 2 years before, they said, hey, we're going to let you go. We can't afford to pay for you anymore. And just 2 years before that, I was finishing my MDiv. One of my best friends, his dad got let go. And I remember telling my friend, Josh was like, if that ever happened to me, like I would just be done with the ministry. I would do something else in life, because the version of me at 24 couldn't imagine how you could deal with an embarrassment of a church saying, hey, we don't have the money, and so we're going to let you go because we would rather pay the youth minister who's been here for 10 years instead of you who's been here for 18 months. It just seemed like I didn't have that in me, but I wasn't forced to grow into that yet. And so every time you experience a disappointment, the part of grief is you being formed into the version that can carry that weight, but you also can reject that. It's not like it's going to happen naturally. You have to choose to grow through grief, and you don't have to, but if you want to love the life you have, you have to.
It's fascinating because the first chapter and the out of the disappointment demand is the secret of contentment.
Yeah.
Like, talk about contentment in the face of disappointment. Like,
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I think the reason I have that chapter is because of one of the matriarchs of my church here in Austin. When I first got hired, I get this letter, and anyone who's a pastor knows this letter, where you get this really intense sort of note from someone that you don't really know, and they have a cute little gift. Like, she sent a pair of burnt orange University of Texas socks. It's her alma mater. And, I get there and she calls me the Luke, and she's a really funny lady. She's in her 80s. Her name is Miss Betty. And like, she knows that she's the alpha dog, right? Like, she knows the room's going to follow her. And she was just this sweet, funny, brilliant woman. And what I didn't know about her is that when she was in her late 30s, her husband was a professor at UT. She had 2 kids. And then out of nowhere, this unexpected disease comes and takes her husband away from her. He dies. And then a few years later, her daughter dies. And the version I saw of Miss Betty 40 years later was one that didn't carry resentment. She didn't carry any hard feelings. It was just like she learned this amazing miracle, like of out of ashes that something new and beautiful can be born. And so when her son told me, Luke, when you're doing the funeral, this is a verse that I want you to read. It's Philippians 4, like that I have found the secret to be content in all things. And I was like, of course that's the verse, because she's embodied this for me, that she became this person that had contentment. And I think one of the reasons that Paul has this line about, I have learned the secret, is that you don't just have it. Like, it's not something that just comes in the toolbox, but it's something that you have to glean and learn for yourself so that you can have that contentment.
Yeah. And you think about that from Philippians. I mean, you get to Corinthians, and the church has gone through such trial and struggle, and they are like demanding the opportunity to give. And even out of their like struggle, like they because they have this level of trust. I often wonder, it's like what he saw and learned in the people there of like, oh my goodness, and it's like, who was his, Mrs. Betting, just this like, these people who had just had this kind of convictions of steel, that contentment. I think oftentimes for many of us, it's we don't think disappointment's going to come.
Yeah.
And then for many of us, and I love the order at which you build this book, because you talk about the disappointment demand, but then you have this demand of connection. But I feel like so many people who are walking through disappointment, they don't have connection.
No.
Which is really, really difficult to be reminded that you can get to the other side of this, that there is something that's rising from the ashes and being birthed. Talk about what that looks like for you in your life.
Well, if I could go back to that story about me getting let go in Florida when I was a young preacher, my wife, we just announced that our now oldest daughter, our firstborn, was like about to be arriving on the scene, and we're like, hey, we're having our first kid. Cool. Next week, guess what? I don't have a job. Like that. It was just like that sequence of events. And one of the things that got me through that were the friends that called. We talked about Rick Atcher just a second ago. He called and checked on me almost weekly, just been like, Luke, how you doing? How you holding up? What interview, what job? Like, and ultimately I ended up planting a church through his church. But more than like the job, it was the presence of a guy who's willing to say, hey, I'm going to call this idiot 24-year-old and just check, or 25 or 6-year-old, and I'm just going to check on him. I had another friend, Josh Ross, who would call me up. He's one of my best friends. And he, hey, what'd you do today? I was like, oh, not much. Like, how do you fast track a pastor search process? You don't. But like the phone calls were what sustained me during that disappointing season. But I think we often talk about like the crisis of masculinity these days. And for me personally, I think the crisis of masculinity is really isolation.
Yeah.
I had a heartbreaking conversation not too long ago with a friend, and he was gracious enough to share what he was going through with me. And he was just saying, hey, I'm going through this and this and this. And I knew he hadn't talked to anyone about this. And so I knew this was sacred for him to share this with me. So I didn't miss this moment. I was fully present and I just listened and I was aware of what all this meant to him. And so I just mostly just listened. Occasionally I'd ask a follow-up question. But at one point he stops and he looks at me and he goes, I don't really have anyone to talk to about this stuff. Luke, do you have someone to talk to about this stuff? And like, I felt really, truly humbled to say, honestly, I do. And one of the great riches of my life is the fact that I have a lot of great friends, including you, Steve, like who care about me, who check in on me. And I try to do the same for them as well. And that's a type of riches that I didn't fully understand when I was young. I had this, when I was in grad school, I did some personal training and I had this client and he drove a Rolls Royce and an Escalade. Like he had nice cars and he was at a different tax bracket than me. And he had this line where he goes, Luke, I'm rich because of the friends that I have. And I was like, I think you're rich because of the Rolls Royce. I feel like that's a rich people thing to do. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize like that's the true riches because that's really what sustains you in those moments.
It's really interesting because I think when I was coming up in ministry, I really wanted like this constellation of mentors, like older voices. You know, you talk about Rick, you know, just like what an incredibly humble, wise man, you know. But like I tried to have various mentors and I probably only had a few friends. And then I was like preaching and speaking and their connections and acquaintances but not like friends, you know? And I had mentors, I had people I could call and learn from.
Yeah.
But it's been wild, I feel like in the last like 5 or 6 years to like go through that moment to say, okay, like we're doing this, right? Like we're like friends. Like we're like, you know, we're gonna go spend a couple days together. And we're gonna like talk about stuff. Like I'm gonna call you. And you're gonna call me, and you have permission. You know, like, but there's I think for many of us coming up in ministry, we're like, oh yeah, we'll find that. And then you get like, when you're a youth pastor, you're like hanging out with your youth volunteers and you're hanging out with students, you know. Yeah. But then you start getting higher in leadership, and it gets lonelier, and then you haven't cultivated and budgeted time for connection. And then you're like, it feels like Top Gun, like where'd they go? Where do you go? You know, like you don't have it, you know? And so, but I feel like you've been really intentional. Like sometimes I'll call you and you're like, oh, hey, I'll call you back. Like I'm with this group of guys in California, or I'm with this, you know, and you even write about that in The Demand of Connection. Just, I think it was Pastor Rick who pulled some people together, but you walked through some of the phrases where they were the kind of safe space that could ask you, how are you grieving your mom's death? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Well, we're going to continue with this Rick Ashley Love Fest that this podcast has become. But so he puts this group together. It's a group of a dozen guys that tragically, we used to be young preachers and now we're just preachers, which is the worst part of the story. But we get together every fall. And over the years, I realized basically what we do is group therapy. And so we'll basically get an hour for each of us and share what's going on, family, ministry, all that stuff. And then we'll kind of open the floor up and people will just ask follow-up questions based on what was said. And, there's a moment just a couple of years ago, and my friend Josh Ross, who I guess about a dozen years ago, his sister passed away at the age of 31, his older sister. And so he's been through grief in ways that, most of us don't understand. And so I was just going around the circle and he goes, Luke, have you made space to grieve your mom? And I needed that. And there's been times where they'll be like, hey, you did this, or hey, let's go for a walk. We need to talk about this. Or they'll ask Luke, like, seriously, are you okay right now? And sometimes this happens in the group, sometimes this happens in phone calls, sometimes it happens elsewhere. But like there's a group of people in my life that have like a full green light to ask whatever question they need to ask. And I trust them enough to answer them. Because that's part of it. It's like you can't just be vulnerable with anyone. And part of being a leader is that you understand that your relationship with people in your church is always mediated through the way that they understand you as pastor. And that's an honor that we've chosen to receive. It's a responsibility we've chosen. It's a weight that we've chosen to carry. So I'm not like upset about that. Like if you sign up to play quarterback, don't be upset when people give you extra criticism, and don't be upset when people give you extra praise. Like both of those things aren't true. No complaint about that, but just naming the reality. But you need people who don't see you as Pastor Steve. You need people who see you just as Steve, where your spiritual health doesn't dictate their spiritual health. It doesn't impact them. Like there's no like, hey, you have to be this for me. Like that's not good for anyone. And so we all need those spaces where we can have those relationships that sustain us during adversity and also during success.
Yeah. Okay, you don't have to answer this question, but I'm like genuinely curious. I read Rob Lowe's biography, and the first opening like paragraph is genius. He says, I think it was Alfred Hitchcock who says, an Academy Award is won by the characters in the story. And for Best Picture. And he says, I think the same thing is true. If you have people in your life that are just dynamic and challenging, and they press and they ask, like he just goes on these amazing descriptions, kind of like the group of guys that you have. He's like, you set yourself up to win an Academy Award. But if you surround yourself with no one or with the most safe and vanilla, you're going to find your life going straight to DVD, which half the audience has no idea what that means. But I thought that line was so powerful. Like the cast of characters in our life.
That's real.
Just, it really, really matters. I'm curious, of the 12, and this is the question you don't have to answer if it's too personal. From the jump, how many are still in it?
We've lost a few. One passed away from cancer. We have, one or two that made some decisions that have precluded them from being in ministry. There's a core group that still gets together, probably, 8, 9, I think, something like that.
I just say that because it's like, sometimes, you could set it up to be like, oh, if I get my guys, then I'm going to be okay. It's not true. You have to put the work to make the relationship work. Here's a line. The relationships that you keep are the relationships that you keep on your calendar. And not everyone is at the stage of life or has the bandwidth or has the commitment to invest in every relationship. And some people have a lot of community. We have one guy who helped start a new group. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And that's, I think, a success in itself. But so there's no judgment for, what group you're in or what you're out or, which friends. I think Jesus picked 3 out of the 12 to be his best friends. Yeah. I think a few of the other 9 probably like, bro, seriously, I'm a better friend than Peter. I don't say the ridiculous stuff he says. Like I would be a better, anyway, whatever. The point is that we all have to invest in those relationships. And you can't be best friends with everyone. That's just how life works. But you have to make sure that you prioritize those relationships that are closest. Yeah. And one pastor reminded me after like some situation, he's like, Jesus was only 11 for 12 out of his disciples. What I mean? Like, it's just like
one tried to kill him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have all these like unique moments, So you go from the demand of connection, the next one's brevity. So that was really interesting. Like, and I'm curious, like, were you really strategic with the order? Did it feel like, not so much linear. I didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
But like, was there I want to go to disappointment. I feel like connection, brevity, the demand of brevity.
It's a dark turn. It's a dark turn right there. It had to end with the demand for presence, because I think that is the culmination. And I wanted to start with that, but no. It has to be the end. I think you have to start with what's at your core. Like, is it grace or mercy, or is it love and striving? Or is it grace, mercy, and love, or is it striving and effort and merit? Like that has to start what's at the core. But connection, I think brevity forces its way into every conversation.
And to define it, what do you mean by brevity?
Like, it means that life is brief, that it doesn't last. Like, life is a mist. From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. And life is constantly interrupting you, going, this isn't forever. And if you're in church work, unfortunately, most pastors have heartbreaking situations of untimely and unexpected deaths. And as I'm saying that, I bet most of us pastors have names that pop up. Some of us have those contacts still in our phone. And so every time we type a certain name, we see someone that we love that's not there anymore. And none of us want to delete those contacts. And, life, my mom passed away 4 years ago. Steve's dad passed away 5, for the listeners if you don't remember. And that was a surprise to me. My mom had a chronic illness. She had Lyme disease since I was a kid. It shaped our reality for as long as I can remember. And yet it still was surreal when I got the phone call saying, Luke, your mom has passed. And it continues to be something that I have to make peace with. And there's a lot of things about mortality that force you to do that. And it can lead to despair. I mean, nihilism is an option for a reason, because sometimes you look at everything and you go, man, this is, if you're lucky, you get 4,000 weeks, right? If you're lucky. And it's heartbreaking. One of my good friends, he and I went to college together. Every fall I would go out to Abilene to do his college ministries, fall retreat for his college students that he worked with, mostly just because I wanted to hang out with Mark. And Mark had 3 kids and was driving home, gets in a car accident, and all of a sudden his wife is a widow and his 3 kids don't have a dad anymore. And Mark was, I sat in his driveway getting my haircut before I did my mom's funeral, because it was during COVID and all the barbers were shut down. And Mark was the friend that I called. When my mom passed away 2 weeks after, my dad said, hey, I need some help getting some stuff out of my house. And I was like, all right, let me call Mark. And Mark was the one who went over to my parents' house. And then, a year later, he's gone. And it's just like, life is short, and it can be really depressing, or it can teach you to savor what's right in front of you. I've got a t-shirt that Mark's brother made, and it says, make your mark. It was kind of a fundraiser for the family after Mark's passing. And I have it set in my closet, so I see it every day. And it's just like this daily reminder to go, today's a gift. I mean, I know Mark wishes he could see his kids, and I know Mark wishes he had one more day. And that's not his reality, and it is mine. And I'm going to be grateful for what today is. And in some ways, it doesn't make every day as happy, but it makes the days that are a little bit lower substantially more meaningful, because you see, even this day and all its struggle is a gift.
Yeah. It's thanks for sharing that. And to think about, to even love life when you lose a dear friend, and months before that, you lose your mom. You have all these feelings going through your mind and your heart and your body and your soul. And I think that you talk about savoring the strawberry, and finding those moments where you can cherish, where you can delight. But oftentimes we do that to dismiss or escape. That's not what you're talking about. You're so present to the reality of it that you're feeling the weight on both sides, the heartache and the goodness that's before you. And I think that's one of the areas that many of us, we try to minimize or dismiss or bypass, or spiritually bright side. And what I just so appreciate about you, Luke, is when I'm with you, like you're like telling jokes, you're telling stories, you are present, you're funny, but you're also like really, really vulnerable and human and real. And, like we didn't even know each other. We knew of each other, but it was our parents passing that actually brought us together.
Yeah.
Like it was like through mutual reality that like, oh, and mutual friends. But
Yeah.
I've appreciated your ability to hold both.
Thanks, man.
And I think that's rare. And what do you say to the person who maybe is living too much in the hard and the struggle? What do you say to them? And then what do you say to the person who's maybe spiritually bypassing or trying to bypass or minimize, and they're just trying to find the joy?
Top half, yeah. Well, as an Enneagram 7, like the top half of life is my sweet spot, right? Like that's my zone that I naturally want to live in. But I found that there is something almost like too sweet about it. Sometimes it's like pop music where you're like, I like pop music, but like as a guy in his 40s, like sometimes pop music is just too like light and lacking substance. But the other option of, just being like, man, this sucks, and being like too Ecclesiastes all the time is also not satisfying. When I got to our church in Austin, I had one of our then elders' phone numbers in my phone, the only one, because he was a family friend, my father-in-law's best friend, the father of my sister-in-law's high school best friend. His name's Greg Watts. And 5 years ago, his life ended in suicide while he was serving as one of our elders. He was about to become the chairperson for our elders 2 or 3 months later. And that's one of the worst things that I've ever had to lead through. My wife was at the hospital. My phone was turned off. Like, thanks, Andy Crouch, TechWise family. Didn't have my phone on. And my wife's night shift nurse. And so she comes home from the hospital early. She's staying there in her scrubs and turns the light on and wakes up. Luke, Greg is dead. And like the words didn't make sense to me. And I had to look at my phone to see all the stuff, the calls and texts I missed. And, I go and it's a terrible day. Many of you pastors know what it's like to be a pastor in a terrible day like that. And I get home that night, and my youngest daughter says, in complete ignorance to what my day has been, she goes, "Dad, let's have a dance party." And she turns on Taylor Swift. And I love Taylor Swift, but it didn't feel like pop music Taylor Swift was the right call at that time. But I also knew Greg would want me to dance with my daughter because that's what he loved to do. He loved his daughters. And there's something about that moment where it was the most respectful thing I could do to Greg and to my grief, is to be like in that moment with my daughter and to celebrate that this is the day that the Lord has made. And some days are going to be really low notes. And those are the days that you have to be faithful and play the low note. And some days it's going to be a really high note, and you're going to play the high note because that's what the day has to offer. And Alan Watts has this thing about life isn't like a finish line to cross, but a song to play. And every day offers us a note that's part of the day. And you don't get to pick if it's a high or a low note, but just be present to what the day is. And sometimes that means you have to grieve. And sometimes it's you're celebrating. But whatever the day is, it's still, as the psalmist said, this is the day that the Lord has made.
Man, it's amazing because I think for so long for me, just the achievement and going and, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, that I never really knew how to like check in with myself. To like, what, like just that moment of what you're talking about, like your daughter asking you, you want to dance to Taylor Swift, and you checking in going enough to go, this is not probably, and yet this is what Greg would want, and this is what Greg would do, and yet I can't. Like just that level of presence, not just to being with your daughter, but the level of presence to even your own self, and knowing what, to be able to go, oh man. And I think that's, as I was like reading through this, you just kept chipping away, and I'm not someone who likes to check out table of contents. I just want to jump into the book. So I have
me
I have
too.
no idea. I don't want to know where it's going.
Yeah, me too.
And so, but then like all of a sudden another turn hit when you start talking about this fighting demand, but it was around the ego.
Mm.
And I found myself realizing, wow, one of the biggest areas to being present and to enjoying what I already have, and that secret of contentment, it's like my fragile and broken and like my ego, And so I'm just, again, I love getting in the mind of an author or a pastor, just like, but what did you learn about about how your ego was preventing you from actually loving the life you already have?
Yeah. For me, I found ego a lot like the voice that is contradicting what the Spirit of God is doing within me. One of the first people I ever baptized was when I was preaching at a tiny rural church in West Texas. The town's called Moran. It's a town of 200 people. There was I started preaching when I was 18. It's a hilarious story. The matriarch of the church, her name's Audrey, which is my youngest daughter's name, which speaks to how important that church was to me. But the first kid I baptized was a kid named Jesus. And I baptized Jesus in this church building that was built maybe 1900, like 1905 or something. It's ridiculous. And there's roosters that you hear that are being raised for cockfighting next door. Like it is, yes, it's West Texas. And I baptized this kid in this old baptistry. And afterwards, he tells me, he says, Luke, when you were lowering me into the water, there was a voice that I heard saying, no, no, no. And then as soon as I went underwater, it went silent. And then I heard a voice that said, yes, 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 as I was raised up. And I think the ego is the voice that's always saying no, no, no to growing into being who you need to be to love the life that you have. And I think the ego is that false self that we're the former self, like that Paul talks about, that we're supposed to put away. And it's the voice that says, no, don't call the friend and say you need help. Don't apologize. Don't confess. Don't be present. Don't turn off the computer and turn off the phone and learn to sit in silence. Like it's the voice that's always preventing us from growing into who we need to be. And you got to fight against that. And it's not, we fight for our life to love our life, not as a way to make our life lovable, but instead as an expression of the love that we already have for our life. We have to fight for it. And for me, the ego is the way that I describe that which is pulling us away from the spirit and into the flesh.
That's so beautiful. No, no, no. Yes, yes.
Isn't that a great story?
Such a great story. Gosh, that's like, what's really incredible about this, and you already alluded to it. Like you end the last section is the demand for presence, and just you just, man, such a beautiful culmination of what you were walking. And the subtitle, it's a guide. Like you really pastorally guide, and I jokingly said you pester because like you're pushing and pulling, and it's so beautiful. But what I was thinking is I've been trying to figure out a series to do, because we have a whole bunch of marketplace leaders in our church and people, stay-at-home parents and people who are kind of entering into second half of life or in the retirement phase, But I was like, this would be an amazing series. Like you could really do 6 weeks on and just hit each of these. I can like see it, and just to really help people, whether in the workplace, whether in the family, whether in their situation of life that they're like, is it ever going to get any better? Just to really guide people towards that. And I also think, man, then to have a small group being able to read a couple of these chapters and then just be able to process together of like what stood out to them. Are you doing a sermon series? Like, is there small group stuff actually being created?
Okay, you're shaming me because I probably should do the curriculum small group stuff. No, like it's set up in a way that you obviously could do that. And I think each of the demands has an ability to have, you spend a couple weeks, each demand has 2 chapters, or the one for fighting has 3 chapters. But yeah, I think it definitely function in that capacity. And I mean, obviously it's written by a preacher. Like, so these are things that, have been near and dear to my heart. And I'll teach some of this at our church here in Austin at some point. And, but yeah, no, I think that would be, hopefully that'd be a great resource for pastors, because I think one of the greatest honors that I give books that I've read is how much of the content that I rip off and put in a sermon while giving credit and while sourcing my material. We don't need any plagiarism, fellas and ladies. But those of you, I've definitely stolen a lot of your stuff, Steve. And yeah.
Well, I honestly, I think that was the big thing. I was reading through it going, gosh, I could see this. I mean, because it's such an identity series. It's such a calling series. I mean, there's just so much in it. I really do think selfishly it'd be awesome if maybe you just put some questions around each section. Not to shame you. I'm just saying, just help me out.
I feel like, okay, fine, Steve.
Help me out.
Just because Grieve, Breathe, Receive has the questions already lined up for you, and you pastors like, what can I preach on? Grieve, Breathe, Receive. I told you, buy that one first. It's already got the questions for your small groups. That's the one you start with. Y'all just read this for your own spiritual formation. You can steal it, turn it into a series yourself. Steve, if they're your listeners, these ladies and gentlemen are smart people. They can come up with 2 questions themselves.
Okay. I do want to say this though. It's fascinating to me. I think both of our last 2 books have been, they're not the same,
but they are.
But they have the same last name. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're like.
The thing beneath the thing, Befriending Your Monster. It's clearly talking about the subterranean. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right.
We did not really know each other, but they came out around the same time. And then I'm like reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is, and then I'm reading through yours and I'm like, how did this happen? But then you play back some of the conversations we had. It's like, we're walking through similar stuff and thinking, but your process through my process, it's just amazing to see. And Befriending Your Monsters is an amazing book. It's fantastic. And Luke, talk about just, because I think this is a really interesting fact about you. I think for a while, I would always wonder like, okay, who are the pastors who hoop? And basketball.
I wonder where this is going.
And I found myself like just kind of like ranking myself like, okay, who, all right, maybe, maybe this, okay, maybe I'm like, all right, maybe I'm top 30, just in this.
Okay. Can you give me like your, pick up 3 for hoops?
Well, I mean.
You have your 5?
Oh man, that's a good question.
That JP guy seems really tall up in Waco.
Yeah, Pecluda. I don't know if he can hoop. He's got some. He maybe can. There's a couple guys. There's one Jason Smith who's out in St. Andrews, out in Newport Beach. He can hoop. He used to.
Velotis seems to talk a lot about hoop. I don't know if he actually can play.
He's got a nice little lefty J like from the Instagram. Daniel Grothy played a ton out in Colorado. I had always had this dream of doing this like during All-Star Weekend. Pastor basketball. Like I just think to raise money, I thought it would be fun, but
it's hilarious.
Okay, that was my intro into this question. What color belt are you?
I am a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Like Hoyas Gracie is like that was the first one I ever saw of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I see these videos, and sometimes you have these posts, and you've either gotten decimated or you have just gone into the ring. And I'm curious, what does that physical activity what does that do for you when you're absolutely wrestling someone you do not know, number one, and then they find out you're a pastor, number 2. Like, how does that conversation work?
Okay, so it's an amazing sport. I absolutely love it. And I was just being berated by one of my coworkers who says, Luke, you do too much violent stuff. You need to stop that. I'm like, Kathleen, I will not stop it. You're not the boss of me. Leave me alone. So this is in the background of my head. I have a lot of very good friends that I've run into and been fortunate enough to have in my life because of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I am extremely grateful for that. Though I probably shouldn't tell this story. I was trying to text one of my daughter's friends' dads, but I accidentally texted one of the guys from my jiu-jitsu gym. And I was talking about, daughters and some of the, kids, their male friends at their school. And the guy from jiu-jitsu was like, is this some code? Like, do you want me to go break someone's leg? Because I will. And I was like, thank you. That's exactly the energy I want from you. Keep it up. But, okay, your question, what's it like? Sometimes people are like, oh, like I just lost to a pastor. Sometimes it's very disorienting for some of them to hear that. Sometimes the news travels pretty fast. I've done a few competitions, and so that's where I typically will roll with someone that I don't know. Roll is what we call like scrimmage or like play against. That's the word we use. And so Austin's a pretty big jiu-jitsu community, and so there's pretty big tournaments here. And so I've been able to do a handful of them. And there's a unique camaraderie that you develop very quickly with someone that you're trying to like step on a mat. There's no one you can hide behind. It's not like, it's someone else's fault. No, like you're just in the middle of a mat. You have rules that you're going to follow, but you're going to try to simulate choking or strangling or breaking someone's arm or leg. And like, there's nowhere to hide. And so there's a level of respect that you develop almost instantaneously with someone who respects the game and respects the martial art. And, it's been so much fun. It is such a exciting thing.
So I think there's all this like language around, embodiment and the incarnation and, like body keeps score, all of that stuff. Yeah. I've always been like fascinated, like with this for you. Because like, I played basketball in college. Play's not the right word. I sat the bench, but got free shoes. Like I loved competition.
On a Division I team, like that's not nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, yeah. But I have this, you get into ministry and I don't compete. Like you don't have like the same level like of competition that you were like, I want to beat this rival school. I want to absolutely decimate my rival. Like you don't, it's not the same kind of. And then I watch you get into a mat and, have this tussle. And I'm like, I wonder, what is that like, if you're in an elder meeting and you're like, I don't have to fight this one. I can take it out on the mat. Do you find yourself like in those moments going like, man, before I was doing this, like there would be things I didn't know how to work through my being. And this somehow gives me it's a healthy escape. It's a healthy outlet.
It's a beautiful sport. But here's the weird thing. Like I'm never like trying to hurt someone. Like I have moves that I'm trying to do. There's things I'm trying to set up, even in a competition. Like I want to do this. I want to get to this position. But the idea of actually hurting someone is nowhere in the equation. There's not like, oh, I want to take this out on my high school football coach who disrespected me, or like this guy who dated my wife. Like none of that lasts this long in the sport. That gets literally beaten out of you. And it becomes like, this isn't like, I'm trying to kill someone. This is just I'm just competing. I'm trying to do my chess moves. They're trying to do their chess moves. And afterwards, literally the bell rings and you get up and you start shaking hands. I was training with one of my good friends. His name's Eric. He's done professional MMA fights. He's younger than me. He's a black belt. He's very tough, like incredibly tough. And he's better than me, like I said, but he's probably 30 or 40 pounds lighter than me. He fights at, I think, 145. And last week we're training and I had this move, it's like if you're on the 20-yard line in a football game and you think you're going to at least look to the end zone, but you know in your head you're going to check down and get a 5-yard gain in the flats, right? Like it's that equivalent. Like it's not going to work.
Total Dak Prescott move.
Okay, that's a little too soon. But And then, so I had this, it's called Ezekiel choke on him. And I didn't think it was going to work, but I thought I could use that to progress my position and get to a more dominant position. And then he starts to make this like gargling sound. And then I go, oh, wow, this is actually working really well. Cool, I'm going to keep doing this. And afterwards, I'm driving home and I'm going, that's a funny sport where you hear your friend choking to death and you think, oh, cool, that's going really well. But the clock goes off, rings. He goes, Luke, that was such a great Ezekiel choke. And then he said, oh, isn't that kind of funny? Ezekiel, that's in the Bible. And Luke's a preacher and he's doing a Bible choke on me. There's another submission it's called a position called a crucifix. And one of my buddies, he was a Marine. He's like, all right, Luke, if you get me in the crucifix 3 times, I'm going to come to church. And it's just a great joke. So honestly, it is a huge blessing, great support. I have a lot of great friends because of it. And it's a beautiful community. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of guys guys and gals who could find real community in something like that are very isolated. And it's wonderful.
I just think that, again, what I respect about you is your level of intentionality, and whether it's through connection with friends, whether it's with just taking your craft and character so seriously, or whether it's just like getting in a mat and just like, hey, this is good for my soul. And yeah, the way you are as a husband and father, I just die laughing at all the cheerleading competitions that you go to. But like, I love watching you because this is a book that really you can see you've done the work and that you actually embody. And I think it's going to be a really, really important gift to so many people that struggle, like genuinely struggle to love the life they already have, and they're just looking in somebody else's yard and they're wondering, well, maybe it could be better over there, maybe over there, maybe if I just did this, and they can't wrestle that quote that you referenced from Joan, like about enough, to the ground. And I think this book really, really helps. Luke, where can people find it?
Go to Amazon. How to Love the Life You Already Have. It's on Amazon. My one encouragement is, if any of y'all are feeling despair and hopeless, I hope more than anything this book is a message of hope, saying there's a way for the transformative power of God's Spirit to sustain and to build you into the person you need to be to love the life you have in this moment. So my encouragement to you, go buy Steve's book first. Breathe. It is such a beautiful book. Buy his, and once you get ours at the same time, but read his first. But seriously, Steve, thanks for talking with me. It's a blessing to be your friend, and you're an encouragement to so many of us. And my life is better because I know you. So thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. Well, hey, where can people find you?
Austin, Texas. If you want to roll Brazilian top team noon any day, sucker, come on, come get
it. Westover Hills Church of Christ in Austin. What's your Instagram and
Luke Norsworthy, Luke A. Norsworthy. So
yes,
yeah,
look them up. We'll have it in the show notes. Friends,
I misunderstood. I thought you were taking that a different direction.
Oh.
Okay, bye. See you.
Friends, thanks so much for tuning in, and please continue to just take some of these words seriously. I really challenge you, before you just kind of go on with your day. What one of those demands do you need just to maybe sit with and bring before the Lord? If there's ever any way I can serve you, never hesitate to reach out online or at steve@steveryancarter.com. Much love, everyone. Until the next Craft and Character episode, grace and peace.